citizen detectives, welcome back to Pop Culture with Pat. I'm going to be talking about Yellowjackets Season 3, Episode 2, Dislocation. This is going to be my spoiler review, recap, breakdown of the episode. Going to be giving you my thoughts, presenting some questions, theories that I have. So I just want to give you guys a heads up again. This is going to have spoilers. Make sure you have seen the episode. If you don't care about spoilers, then feel free to continue watching. But just want to give you that little warning before we jump into things. And before we do, make sure if you guys are new to the channel, hit that subscribe button as well as the bell button next to it. That way you get notifications for all my new videos. Give this video a thumbs up if you can. I really appreciate it, especially going against some of these bigger channels. Every little bit counts. And after what happened with the first video, episode 1, I had to record that thing, and I'm hoping the audio is good. I did as best as I could. I had to record that thing like 4 different times because every time I did, it just kept coming up with choppy, staticky audio. Like I said, I think I got most of it. If there is a little bit in there, I do apologize. Something was wrong with the wire, I think, for my microphone. And so I think, fingers crossed, I got it fixed. But holy shit, that was such a pain in the ass. But anyways, without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about episode 2 because there's a lot to talk about here. So the episode opens up, picks up right where we left off from episode 1 with Mari screaming, and she tells Coach Ben that if you're gonna kill me, just go ahead and kill me, get it over with. And he tells her, I'm not going to kill her. He actually ends up helping her, fixing her leg. She popped it out of place. And that scene where you actually see her pop her kneecap back into place, oh, you just see it moving around. I did not care for that at all. So after the intro, Shauna, she ends up coming back to the Yellowjackets camp, and everyone's talking about they still haven't seen Mari. Did she end up getting eaten by the thing out in the woods that was making those screaming noises? They asked where Shauna was, and Natalie steps in and says, hey, I'm going to go look out for Mari. Does anyone else want to come with me? And first she actually asks if Shauna can come with her, and Shauna just wants nothing to do with it. She doesn't give a fuck about Mari, and so she goes away. Misty, though, she steps up and volunteers herself to go on this little adventure with Nat. So then in the modern day, we see Shauna and Jeff. They're talking, and Jeff is saying, hey, don't forget we got that big dinner tonight with those guys I'm trying to get a contract with from work. And you can just tell Shauna wants nothing to do with it. She's trying to come up with an excuse to get out of the situation. And right at that moment, the doorbell rings, and so she goes to check to see who it is. But unfortunately, it's Lottie. And Lottie just basically walks right in, makes herself at home, says, thank you guys for inviting me in here. And she really just tries to make them feel bad, saying she just got out of the psych ward that you guys had put me in at the end of season 2. Then after that, Callie ends up coming downstairs and convinces her parents to let Lottie stay the night. And I loved Callie's line in this situation. She says to her mom, she says, you have such, I want to speak to a manager energy. And Shauna responds to her and says, first off, no, I fucking don't. That whole interaction just cracked me up. And Jeff's the smart one in the situation. He says it's going to be a hard no as far as her staying over, but again, Callie ends up convincing them to let her stay over. And so obviously, both between Callie, she's got an ulterior motive for wanting Lottie to stay over, but Lottie's also got a motive. Why is she here as well? We then cut to Ty and Van says she feels bad about what happened last night, and so she wants to go to the restaurant to pay off the bill that they ended up skipping out on. But they start talking, end up kissing, and as they do, she ends up stepping on some glass, and so after that happens, Ty says, you know what, you go to the doctor's, I'm gonna go to the restaurant myself and take care of the bill, so you don't have to worry about it. Then we go to Misty and Walter, and Misty is just super fucking hungover after what happened from the night before where she had that 7 shots of whiskey. Totally don't blame her at all for that. And Walter comes in, and he is being such a nice guy here. He has a nice plate of all this breakfast food to help her with her hangover. But he also asks her, he says, hey, was last night, was that kind of a call for help? Because if it was, I'm here to listen. But it's right at that point that Misty ends up getting a call from Shauna, and of course Misty answers it right away. She sees that it's Shauna, and after she gets off the phone, she says to Walter that she's going to go spend some one-on-one time with one of the women that she owes her life to. And Walter, at this point, he actually points out that every time they want something, they reach out to Misty, but whenever she actually needs something in return, they're never there. And not only that, but Shauna, she never asked her about how she got home, was she okay, or anything about the night before. And so I'm definitely on Walter's side in this whole situation. Then we go back to the 90s and we see Natalie and Misty. They're walking along the trail looking for Mari, and as they're walking along, Misty brings up the fact that several people have disappeared, that they don't know what happened to them, one of them being Crystal, which was good to hear her name brought up, especially after I had mentioned that in the episode 1 recap, but also brings up Coach Ben. And shortly after that happens, as they're walking along the trail, you see one of Coach Ben's traps, and Natalie recognizes it instantly. So does Misty, though. She sees it and she goes over and says, hey, this is a clue. We should follow this path. But Natalie doesn't want to do that. She doesn't want to lead Misty right to Ben, and so goes a different way. But you can tell that Misty picked up on that. And we see Mari again, and she's in the hole, and she's talking to Ben, saying that, I never believed that you were the one that burned down the cabin, because she's trying to get out of that hole. And so he comes over and acts kind of surprised when she mentions that the cabin burned down, says that he never smelled it burning down, even though it was burning for weeks. And so do we believe that he never knew about the cabin actually burning down? Because a lot of people kind of assumed that he was the one that burned it down when we saw him at the end of season 2. So do we think that he's lying here? I kind of think that he is, but could there be someone else that maybe burned it down instead? Then we go back to the modern day. We see Misty show up to Shauna's house, and when she gets there at first, she thinks that this is an intervention. She asks if any of the other Yellowjackets are there, but Shauna quickly explains that her and Jeff had to go out to dinner. Lottie is staying the night over, and she trusts Misty, and so she wants Misty to keep Callie and Lottie separated, because she doesn't want Lottie filling Callie's head with all these, things about the wilderness, and all that stuff. And so she wants her to keep an eye on things, which I think is kind of funny, having Misty as a babysitter. We then see Callie. She's in a room, and she's looking at the tape that was in the package when Lottie ends up coming into the room. And shortly after that, Misty comes flying in. She's like, hey, we got to go do some other things, and tries to separate the two. Now, what does Lottie want with Callie? I'm kind of wondering, does she think that maybe Callie can connect to the wilderness, connect to it like Travis was able to back in the day? Definitely want to hear you guys' thoughts on that down below in the comments. Then we go back again to the 90s timeline where we see Van and Ty. They're walking on the trail looking for Mari, and Ty brings up the fact that if Mari's dead, Natalie is really fucked, not only because of that, but because she wouldn't let anyone go looking out for Coach Ben. And how does that look to everyone else? And then Van brings up and says, do you think that you could do better? And Ty responds saying, you don't think I can? So we kind of have another faction, I think, starting here. Again, so the first one, we have Shauna, we have Melissa, whoever else might be joining that group. Then we have Natalie and her group as well. And now there's possibly Ty, and I would think Van would probably stay with her. And so starting to form these little factions after I kind of talked about that in episode 1. At least that's what I'm kind of thinking is going to happen. But curious what your guys' thoughts are. Do you think I'm maybe just overthinking things here? Now, right after that, they hear Travis screaming, and so they run back to the camp, and they see Travis on the ground, and he's saying they're coming. Now, who do you guys think is coming? Do you think it's just an hallucination, or do you think that maybe there is another group that we haven't met yet and they are on their way to meet up with our Yellowjackets team? And after he says that, he also says something along the lines of, it's trying to get inside of me, and that's when he starts choking Lottie out on the ground. Now we go back to modern day, and Ty, she's at the restaurant trying to pay the bill that they skipped out on, and as soon as she gets there, the person behind the register, you can tell that she's suspicious of her. She tells her that this is a cashless restaurant, and so she has to pay by card. And as soon as that happened, I was sitting there as an audience member thinking, don't do it, Ty. You don't want to be able to track your shit. And so she says, I have to go talk to someone. I have to figure out how to get this all situated. When she does that, Ty turns around and sees the picture of the waiter on a table with some candles, and she asks what happened. And you find out that the guy had a heart attack. He died, just like I thought in that first episode. And so then you see the person that she was, trying to cash out with, talking to someone else. And as soon as she realized what's happening, she gets the fuck out of there. And I don't blame her at all for that. We go back to Callie, Lottie, and Misty. They're saying that they should have a sleepover because Misty has never had a sleepover. And so they break out the booze and they start playing Truth and Dare. And at that point, Callie ends up drugging Misty. She gives her some alcohol, mixes it with some NyQuil or something along those lines, and they start playing the game, and Callie asks, what actually happened out there, and she wants to know more about what is this it that you guys talking about. The only thing that I thought was funny with this situation is that I feel Misty was tricked a little too easily, because she can be such a smart character, and so for that to happen, I don't know, it just seemed kind of easy to me. So I don't know if any of you guys kind of felt the same way about that situation. Then we go to Jeff and Shauna's dinner. They're having the dinner where they're trying to get that contract with the guys from with his work, and I can't think of the one guy's name. Pretty sure he was in Final Destination 3, but I thought it was really cool for him to show up. If you guys know who I'm talking about, he's the one who's sitting on the right side, and I just can't think of the actor's name off the top of my head. So if you guys know it, put it down below in the comments. As soon as I see it, I'm going to be like, oh yeah, that's exactly who I'm talking about. But it was cool to see him have a little cameo here, but both of them are just super douchebags. So Shauna gets up, she goes to the bathroom because she wants to call Misty to check to make sure everything's going well, because she hasn't been able to get a hold of her. When she goes in the bathroom, though, and she sits down, all of a sudden someone else comes in, and it looks like they're standing right outside the stall. And then shortly after that, the lights shut off, and Shauna naturally kind of freaks out a little bit, comes out, person's gone, but then she finds a cell phone in the stall next to her, and so she picks that up. We jump back to the modern day again with the whole situation with Jeff and Shauna at the dinner that they're having. Shauna comes back, and she just absolutely, she's had enough of these guys' shit, and she just shits all over them. And she has a line where she says something along the lines of, "You poor little boner." And the way that this situation ends with she leaves, and then Jeff goes to get up, and he just says, "Yep," gets up and leaves. Poor Jeff, he has some of the most awkward situations in the show, and I love it. When we jump back to the 90s timeline again, we see Akila. She comes over to Travis and gives him one of the ducks, tries to comfort him after what has happened, and as she walks away, Lottie ends up coming over again and says, hey, we have to try and figure out what it wants from us. But Travis says that it actually tells him, or told him, that it doesn't want him. There is someone else in the group that it's more connected to, and that's why all the animals trust her, referring to Akila. Clearly, I think Travis is doing this just to get Lottie off his back, but what does this mean for Akila moving forward? Then we see Misty and Nat. They end up coming back, and after Nat leaves, Misty goes over to Shauna and she says, hey, I'm pretty sure that Nat knows that Coach Ben is alive, and then Shauna tells her not to tell anyone else about this. We jump back to the modern time again. We see Shauna and Jeff. They end up coming home, and poor Misty, she has passed out. They end up waking her up, and she just pukes all over the kitchen table or the counter. And then we also see Ty and Van. Van ends up coming home, and she asks how the whole situation with the restaurant went, and Ty lies to her and says, oh yeah, it went totally fine. So then Misty, she ends up coming home. She's just absolutely smashed, and Walter is concerned, rightfully so, once again. And Misty just says that you don't understand what the stuff that we have been through. You'll never get it. And she really kind of treats Walter pretty shitty in this situation. So I felt bad for him in this episode. Now, do you guys think that we are going to get some kind of intervention with Misty in this season? I think that that's probably going to be the case, whether it's Walter or some other people. I think that we'll probably get something along those lines at some point in the season. And then, man, what a way to end this episode. So at the end of the episode, it kind of cuts back and forth between the modern timeline and the 90s timeline. So we see Shauna, she's in her room. She calls the hotel, or she calls the restaurant where she had brought the phone back to the table, to the guest services, and asks if anyone has picked up in the phone. Now, as that's going on, we go back to the 90s timeline. We see Shauna by the area with her baby, and she hears a noise, and so she tells whoever it is to come out, and we see it's Melissa. Melissa comes over to her, and she says she's so sorry for what has happened to her, and that she's just been so resilient in this situation. And Shauna she comes over, and I thought at this point she was going to kill Melissa, because she pulls out a knife, sticks it up to her throat, and says, you tell anyone about this, I will kill you. And then at that point, Melissa kisses her. I did not see that coming at all. That shocked me. And as that happens, modern day Shauna is on the phone, and she says, what did she look like? And so I am almost positive at this point, I'd be really surprised if they go in a different direction. We know, I think at this point, that for sure Melissa is one of the survivors in the modern day. Granted, I don't know if any of the other team knows about that, but pretty sure that confirms that she is a survivor. And do we think that confirms that maybe Hilary Swank is playing the adult version of Melissa? I know I had seen some of those theories out there, and I think that's kind of maybe where they're going, which I am totally down for that. But man, what a way to end the episode. So I definitely want to get your guys' thoughts on that whole situation for sure. What an amazing episode 2. A lot to talk about, so leave your comments down below. As always, guys, if you guys are new to the channel, hit that subscribe button as well as the bell button next to it. That way you get notifications for all my new videos. Give the video a thumbs up. I really appreciate the support because, like I said, a lot of bigger channels are covering the show, and so sometimes my stuff does get buried, especially when they put out the reviews. So any little bit really goes a long way. I can't thank you guys enough of how supportive you've been as far as my Yellowjackets content goes. I can't wait for next week. I can't wait to see you guys in the comments. And as always, guys, please make sure to check back for more Pop Culture with Pat.